What do you think about the ways that women look at each other? We judge before we meet, and it changes the whole friendship. Like Paige and Charlotte would never have been friends were they not judging all those other mothers.
Right, right. I think that women's relationships in some way are far more complicated than their relationships with men. I think I was so interested, without even being aware that I was necessarily doing it in the book, in writing about female friendships, because we are known by our friends. And we certainly bond with each other in times of crisis, or these times when we go through these big touchstone moments. So the girls bond in college because they're all there having the same experience. The mothers bond on the playground because they're having the same kind of experience. And when we bond in those really important, pivotal, transitional moments in our lives, we're really vulnerable. And therefore we give each other an awful lot of information about ourselves. And therefore we make ourselves uniquely equipped to really damage each other. We know where each other's soft spots are.
So Heather is the bad girl in her school, but she's not bad at all
She
until
is
she
a good
scratches
girl.
that guy. She's a total good girl. And it's not until her rage comes up that she does anything bad.
Her big crime is that she got breasts before everyone else.
She wore a leotard to school.
Right. Her big crime is that she becomes this sexualized creature, and everybody projects all of their sexual frustration onto her, as we know happens, and it always happens with one girl, right? Everybody projects all this negativity and all this violence onto her. They need a repository for that because they're not yet at a place where they're having those kinds of relationships. She makes people uncomfortable. She makes older men uncomfortable, and she's not a patsy. They can't break her down. They can't make her a victim, and that also makes her very scary. If you can't when we can't break a woman down, when we can't put them in a box, usually the biggest hammer that we get out of that toolkit to destroy women is that hammer of you're a slut, right? You're a slut, and that's what they hit her with. And while she can really seem to sometimes even own that, ultimately, as you see throughout the book, at the end, it's had a huge impact on her identity. She doesn't trust people. She doesn't in some way feel lovable outside of that, having that sexual power. And the idea that then her son at the end will be involved with a woman who also appears to be the slut is really, really hard for her, because the only person she can really love or trust, the only man, the only person is this son.
Well, that's one of my questions for you, because there are a few female characters in your book that we see at different points, in their lives. There's Charlotte, of course, and Heather, who at the beginning is the bad girl and is judged by all the other girls in her school, and then we find her at the end of the book. I love the way you
but a lot of people think of it as a novel,
but
and
the way
I do
it's
too.
bookended, so we come back to her, and she's the one who's doing this judging against the very girl. She sees herself in her son's girlfriend, so
she doesn't like it.
Yes, she doesn't like it. But what do you think that says about the way women's relation to other women changes over time? I would want to think that Heather maybe softens over time, but in fact, all of her experiences have hardened her to other women. Were you trying to say anything about that, or?
Well, one thing that I was very interested in Heather's story was the idea that we all have these personal mythologies, right? We create a sense of ourselves that we carry around with us. It's like if the plane were going down and you had one story you could tell to the person next to you. We all have this script inside us, and that's her script. And her script comes from that relationship with those boys, and how their love for her or their lust for her made her feel powerful, and she'd never really felt empowered. I felt really strongly about bookending I felt very strongly about bookending the collection with Heather, because I think women derive a lot of power from their sexuality, and certainly the culture sexualizes women a lot. We sexualize them and then we demonize them for being sexual. And in her case, I felt that it was really clear how her sexuality had affected her sense of power, and power is very important in the book, where we derive our power and how we use our power.